to speak. I want to be very clear. There was obviously an oversight or a glitch with the flyer that you saw online, because yours truly is the moderator. I am the moderator. The brother on your left is one of the co-conduit liberators of the text that I'll remind you of momentarily. I also want to point out that Sister Ayo, Dr. Ayo, I hope she done jack me, peanut butter and jelly bagel sandwich eating genius. Like I just said, peanut butter and jelly bagel sandwich eating genius. The founder of Universal Right Publications. The founder of Universal Right Publications. Graduate from HU right across the way. So I want to say, seriously, give my honors to Dr. Skylar Webb. The brother is over in Seoul now in Korea. He wasn't able to have his physical person here, but I'm sure the brother on my left, Baba Dr. Benson Cooke, distinguished professor at UDC, well known in the community to, create some chaos, like the brother said, where there's chaos, black people have to shake things up and make things happen. So with that in mind, I want to bring to your attention epigenomic awareness as a key to black mental health, the disruptive effects of not knowing. So please indulge the Sankofa family and village, who nurtures the souls and minds and bodies of our collective community of melanin-dominant humans. And may the brother on my left say a couple of words, and then I'm going to start dropping some questions on him. And after I drop the questions on him, I'm going to allow you all to ask questions. Before anything else continues, you know what must be done when you're in the presence of African people. All right? And you know how black people are. I was thinking that when they tagged my car, I hope they didn't hit the boot of my car and do something to my drum, right? And so the little Asian lady in the front seat, as they were shifting around, I was trying to make sure my drum was okay. So I want you to know that I cannot continue talking until I acknowledge those spirits are not here. And momentarily, I'm sure this brother is going to reference the sister for you, but I have to be very clear. You don't do anything without the drum. The drum represents the earth. The drum represents the womb of creation, and the drum represents our women, all right? So I don't say a word more until you hear the drum. Sure. Okay, my brother, Dr. Benson Cooke, who's flanking me on my left. Please give us the honor and the privilege of saying what you'd like before I start dropping these questions on you. And the questions I'm sharing with you are foundation questions. And then we're going to open up the platform for comments, Q&A. So, brother, what would you like to say?
If there is anyone over 60, you could please give me permission to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'm honored to be in this sanctuary of knowledge, Sankofa books. I think that before I begin, I want to give honor to those children I stand on, those who are unknown and those who are known. And I ask that they guide my thoughts and my words as I share this work that was pretty much an evolution of hearing the works of my mom, my dad, my uncles, and others. But at the same time, I want to honor a sister who made a transition far too soon, someone that I had the opportunity to do a lot of work with, Dr. Kimberly Andale, who transcended about a year ago at a very young age. She was a neuroscientist, neuropsychologist as well. And I always want to acknowledge her because when I first wanted to move in this direction, being the direction of a psychologist, moving into epigenomics, she was a believer. She said, yeah, let's do it. And I'm saying it politely, her words were more profound. But we got on it, and the consequence between the three of us, Dr. Dale, Dr. Webb, and myself, is this work. So I want to stand on the shoulders of all of those and ready to take it away.
Okay, thank you.
This one is.
Not to turn it on.
Is this,
Is it on?
okay, am I, you can hear me? Okay.
No, I'm supposed to-
Oh, let me do this, please. I want to stand and apologize that I did not recognize the Queen. Now, let me explain this. There's not false platitudes. Dr. Ida Sakai is the person who gave the opportunity for the birth of this product, epigenomic awareness, as a people like mental health. And I want to honor and thank her trust and encourage as she continues to move forward with the word in the spirit of all those who are a part of the struggle. The only, as I know, African American woman with an African American Black publication, something that is so much needed now more than ever. So I want to thank you for trusting Dr. Webb and I and encouraging us along the way. I know it's a rough journey. We didn't meet all the contractual obligations. That's good. We initially promised 140 pages, but ended up with 418.
267.
Okay, yeah. So we're there. But no, I want to, everyone, please honor the sister.
Thank you so much. I really just came up here because Maritu asked me to do a brief introduction before we got started, but Dr. Rasian beat me to it, and he came in with the drums and all the spirits and the ancestors, and I'm so honored that they're both here. But I just wanted to let you know, this event is co-sponsored by the DC chapter of USI, the Association of Black Psychologists, and many of them are here today. I am very honored to be a member of the DC chapter of ABSI. And Dr. Benson is a former president of ABSI, and Dr. Rasian is also a member of ABSI. And so both scholars sitting here today, Dr. Rasian as the moderator and Dr. Benson Cooke as the co-author of Epigenomics. This book is iconic, okay? It is something that is needed more than ever. When I met Dr. Benson Cooke over about 3 years ago, he was doing professional development certification for psychologists and therapists, using this work and research that he's used for over 16 years of research, working not just with Dr. Skylar Webb, but with Dr. Kimbell that he mentioned, and collaborating with many, many psychologists and neuroscientists like Dr. Rasian and others who bring forth their knowledge and their brilliance to make sure that we have the tools as Black people to do something more. So Universal Right Publications is publishing work that are scholarly. We publish Black doctors. I mean, that's it. You know, there are 80% of scholarly work that's published by white people, white men, and only 6% by Black scholars. And we're making room for that. But more than that, it's publishing work that is helpful for our community and helpful for the people that we are serving. And so I just really want to honor Dr. Benson Cooke and Dr. Skylar Webb, even though he's not here, and thank profusely Dr. Rasian for being here and for moderating. Thank you.
And if I could just say one more word before Dr. Rasian speaks, is
Just grab it, baby. Number grab it.
before Dr. Rasian speaks, I just want to acknowledge the fact
This is
that
gonna spell on me, y'all. Go ahead.
I invited him to be the moderator because he is one of the two most prolific neuroscientists that I know. And I figured that if I stumble, he will catch me. Because I always make it clear, even though I'm talking about epigenomics, I am not a geneticist. I don't pretend to play one on TV at all. You know, so bringing in someone who specializes in all of this, I think will help provide some guidance. So Dr. Russell.
Hotel. I guess I have to stand up again, but nonetheless, like I was just telling you about Sister Ayo, you know, and I made a reference to the earth, and I made a reference to the drum, which I have other drums, but the drum, the foundation. And the foundation of all we do comes from the womb of African women. I know you guys know all about mitochondrial DNA and the whole 9 yards. So what I want to do now is I'm going to start dropping some questions on the Bible on my left, and I want to remind you the questions are designed to be open-ended. Benson doesn't have a clue what I'm going to ask him, And that's deliberate because we are among people where ancestors oftentimes override what you thought you should say. Okay? And because of the Sankofa, and as you know, the Sankofa, the bird, that's the egg looking back, but the egg is there in the seed to represent that's what's coming forth. That's why I made a reference about remember, put back together. So in a couple of moments, the Baba is going to tell us. So I want to just drop it on you to start, Baba. This is a serious title. Epigenomic awareness as a key to Black mental health, the disruptive effects of not knowing. So I just want to ask you, Baba, what prompted you to select such a title, and what were the seeds that prompt you to embark on such a monumental engagement? Got you, Baba. I'll say it again. What prompted you to select such a title, and what were the seeds prompt you to embark on such a monumental engagement? You know, Black folks, no one down with the people, we want to know.
Okay.
So talk to us.
All right. Backstory. There are two backstories that converge. The first backstory that converges happened when I graduated from Morehouse College. And my mom, who was a diabetic, had what we call a diabetic attack. And so I remember comforting her with her head on my lap, just having a conversation, trying to keep her alert, and just trying to figure out that, you know, Mom, you know, like, what can I do? What can I do? And then she looked up at me and said, son, you don't want this. And I said, well, how do I not get this? And she said, well, listen to me carefully from what I've learned in my life. She said, don't drink, don't smoke, eat right, exercise, get your rest, and do not hang around crazy people that stress you. So that converges with this. That lesson kind of stuck with me, but it was something that in many ways began to guide how I chose to sustain optimism. Serendipity, a situation I didn't anticipate. I was serving as the national president of the Association of Black Psychologists from 2009 to 2011. On 2011, on a late afternoon, I was with my mentor, Dr. Ed Nichols, and we were sitting, you know, having a meal, and a call comes in from the headquarters of the APSI. And they said, you know, we have National Public Radio online. They want to ask you to come in and do the interview. And I was like, oh, okay, let's talk to them. So they said, yeah, we want to do something on genetics and crime. I said, well, I'm sitting here with, you know, a distinguished psychologist, founder of APSI, all that. They said, no, we want you. And I said, well, why me? They said, because you're currently president. Like, yeah. They said, well, will you come on? I said, well, give me a little bit more. They said, okay. Try to do a Google search and look at the New York Times from 1995 and the most recent issue from that date in 2011. And you'll have the information when you come on the show. So the two articles dealt with the fact that in 1995, the then president of APSI had to address this issue that focused on the fact that NIH was investing resources financially for researchers who were basically doing studies that suggested that Black folks were predisposed genetically to criminal behavior. And they were trying to build up, you know, data on it. Well, APSI basically stopped that at that point, so we thought. In 2011, investigative journalists basically uncovered the fact that what they promised to stop doing in 95, they continued to do up until 2011. So they wanted me to come on. Now, I feel like I'm with family, we're having a conversation. So they wanted the angry Black man on the program. So I was supposed to come on there and be like, you know, what the hell is going on here, blah, 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 that kind of thing. My mentor, and I was ready to, you know, like that did, he said, no, I need you to focus on understanding what you're trying to do, research and statistics and data analysis. I said, no, they're messing with us. You need to go in on it. He said, no, listen, Benson. I said, no. He said, okay, just shut up and listen. I said, okay, that's what you need to listen. So we drafted a plan. So that next morning, he accompanied me to the station. And in the booth, they said, no, there's other panelists there. So I had my two sets of notes. I had the angry black man notes, and I had my statistical analysis notes. So they started off with this guy, Dr. Jonathan Lobb, who had just won the Stockholm Prize in Criminology, which is like the Pulitzer Prize in his field. And, he started, pontificating on his data and his research. And so I wanted to go to my notes, but I said, no, let me go to Dr. Nichols' notes. And so I said, well, where did you get your data? He said, well, I got my data from people that were incarcerated. I said, wait a minute, you got your data from African Americans incarcerated? He said, yes. I said, did it occur to you that African Americans are disproportionately incarcerated for non-criminal offenses? If you go back and hear it, this was his response. Well, we live in a post-racial society now because we have a black president. To which I said, Dr. Nichols is right. I threw my angry black man notes on the ground. And I said, okay, let's review your data. We went over that. I said, now, here's where your data skewed. Do you know what that means? He said, well, I'm not quite clear. I said, in other words, you're pathologizing people for non-criminal offenses and giving geneticists a justification for something that's pseudoscientific. So then he said, well, there are twin studies. So then he went on a slippery slope and said, yeah, there are twin studies that say that twins who grew up in poverty, and those kind of underserved populations, they end up not being able to get an education. I let him finish. I said, okay, I'm a twin. I grew up in the projects. We grew up poor. Poor? No, we couldn't afford the other OR, poor. I said, and the consequence is now I got 3 degrees. Just at that time, they opened up the lines and a sister judge called, said, I too fit those same qualifications. And look at me now. To which the moderator said, okay, we're going to go to someone else, Dr. Lobb. And they went to some other folk to kind of move over what had happened. Bringing this to a close to your first question. After the broadcast was over, I got a call from a colleague at NIH who said the director of the Genome Project was listening in. And she said, they were trying to set you up to be the angry black man. I said, well, of course I got it. Oh yeah, I knew that, no. So she said, she wants to meet with you. I said, great. So we met over at Dr. Nichols' home. And she began talking about what was going on in the field of genetics, but in particular, began talking about epigenomics. So that moment in 2011 was the first opportunity I had to hear about that. Now, my specialty is major depressive disorders. And at that point, I'd already had 2 publications, textbooks on the subject. But as I was listening to her, I said, when we're doing psychological assessments, it's always important to do some background on the family, because what happens in the family oftentimes can be a familiar effect, as they like to talk about in psychology, to what's happening with the person who has the symptoms. I said, maybe this epigenomic thing can be something that can be used to better understand an additional strategy. The key strategies being talk therapy, medication, with an understanding that they call efficacy, but the effectiveness of the two are better than just medication alone. Then you look at social support systems or family systems that are culturally relevant, behavioral approaches, and then I wanted to add this epigenomic piece or gene expression. And so to sum up my brief answer to your question, that all of this fell upon those 2 events, which in many ways opened the door for me to begin to look at a subject I had never contemplated. It was challenging enough just to be focusing on major depressive disorders, but I began to have a curiosity. And out of that curiosity, I devoted myself, more specifically with the Association of Black Psychologists, to begin every year from 2011 on to do a major continuing education. Continuing education means that these are presentations that are done to licensed professionals, be it licensed psychologists, social workers, licensed family therapists, licensed professional counselors, but people who need to get the skills to be more effective in maintaining their licensure to work. So,
Okay, so let me plan this a bit, brother. And I mean, it's great that you gave us the chronology and the catalyst and the triggers to put you on this path. And given that you're using these terms, I'm going to give you an opportunity to clarify for our family, Sankofa and the community, how you actually came to this actual term. And I'm going to be very specific so that you can concisely respond so that we can make some sense out of this, because these are some big words.
Yeah.
You know, so how is it that the anchor term and the title of the book is epigenomic awareness rather than epigenetic, and how are these terms examined in literature? And you haven't got to just share with us epigenomic awareness rather than epigenetic.
Okay, so I'm having a conversation with family. This is a holiday because we're all together. And I'm just sitting at the table and family members asking me the question. So it kind of goes like this. As I begin to look at the etymology of the word, the understanding of the word.
Okay.
Epi is Greek for on top of, genome is gene. So in other words, what I was hearing and what I began studying was that while we have, you know, that which we talk about when we have family reunions. Lord, you look just like your daddy. Oh, you look just like your mom. Oh, you sound like them. Oh, look at your eyes. All this, you know, phenotype, genotype, the things that we get from the genes. What I began to learn was that something else was also happening. You know, so in the nature-nurture debate, you know, are we the product of nature? Are we the product of nurture? There's this other piece. And this takes me back to what my mama said. Epigenome means that there are chemical tags on top of the DNA that act like an on-off switch or like a green light, red light that can basically turn on some things that we don't want or things that we do want, or cut off things that we may not want or things that we may need. And I was like, wait a minute, that's deep. What is it that makes it cut off and on? So for example, what is it that may cut on diabetes? Okay, going back to my mom again. Well, as I studied, I learned that what we take in nutritionally, and here's where it got deep. We go to the mama first, and we say the things that you do, smoking, drinking, eating non-nutritious foods, not knowing how to effectively manage stress, has an impact on the offspring. But we got to look at daddy too, because what I uncovered is that the things that are in the male are also a part of what is shared upon conception, the semen. And so being mindful of what parents take in nutritionally has a profound impact on the offspring. Okay, that's one area. But also toxic environments, you know, can have the same effect. Also, stress can have the same effect. So the title of the book basically provided an opportunity for Sky and I, or Dr. Webb and I, to begin to look at some of the questions that we had around optimal mental health and how the things that are on the outside of us can have just as much of a profound impact as what is inside of us.
Okay, Bob. So the bottom, in so many words, vanilla people, brothers and sisters, used to always talk about your genes or the environment. And so as you're talking about the epigenome, which is sort of like interchangeable with epigenetics, you're basically telling everybody that in detail, you guys have taken apart this argument, which was dichotomous. It's either the environment or it's your genes. You're like, it's all the crap that you guys have done to us across generations that's literally changed our cellular physiology and make us prone to diseases. That's what you're telling us, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. If I could add one piece to it.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So, because it was another part of the first question, epigenetics, epigenomics, you know, tomato, tomato. No, they're not actually the same, but it sounds good to say it. All right. So in this instance, epigenetics, I mean, we're marvelously, wonderfully made. In the embryonic stage, epigenetics begins to take effect. This is where, out of the trillions of cells that begin to develop in the body, you have the DNA strand, which is wrapped around histones. Others like, well, wait, I thought you said you was going to keep it simple. Okay, put it this way. When you look at the DNA, to take it and spin it out and just stand it up is more than 6 feet in every cell, but it's spun around marvelously into what we call chromatin that basically make it possible for it to be in the cell. Okay, now, epigenetics, this is where it makes decisions. Some cells are going to be cells for the fingers, the fingernails, the hands, the arms, etc. Some are going to be for the organs like the heart and the liver, the eyes. So it's specialized. That's the epigenetics. The epigenomics begins to look at once we are evolving and we are inheriting that which was given to us that's in the DNA, that now it begins to determine what will be the outcome of one's overall health. You know, what will one inherit, so to speak, and how they were inherited. This brings us back to twin studies. The reason twin studies are so important is that twin studies are looking at the same DNA. Well, why is it that everyone who is a twin, one may have an illness that the other does not have? And then you get into the epigenomics, meaning that the things that the mama or the daddy did before becomes intergenerational. Okay. What Dr. Webb and I were looking at, I always want to call him Sky. The thing that Sky and I were looking at is, well, wait a minute. Let's pause a question here. Is it possible, if we're seeing these profound effects intergenerationally, that we can see some that are also transgenerationally? Okay. Especially given the centuries of oppression that have impacted Black folk. And this is where it really began to turn me on my head. When you're looking at the chromosome, if anybody here has a pair of sneakers that have shoestrings on them, you have at the top of that shoestring a plastic piece that's holding it together, keeping it from unraveling, right? Look to your neighbors, see if they have one. Can I get an amen from the church? You hear somebody see that? Okay, there we go. Now we can move forward. Collection will come later. All right. So what ends up happening is our bodies, the chromosomes have the same thing. It's called telomeres. And what was discovered in some of the research is that we have so much when we're born, and as it begins to decay, we move toward the end of our life. Or as my mom used to say, a one-way non-refundable ticket. Okay. So in this instance, what researchers found is that not only age affects telomeres, but also stress, poverty, racism, systemic institutional. He's rising up on the seat. What is he getting ready to say? We wanted to provide scientific proof so when you have to get in an argument with a crazy person, you can make it short and brief. Just show them the 400 pages of this book and just shut them up and move on your healthy way, you know. So the point is that in terms of giving you kind of a brief synopsis of the epigenetics, the epigenomics, and why this becomes important, what we wanted to do was to create an awareness, epigenomic awareness, as what does the key do? It opens the door to understanding our health and recognizing there are a lot of disruptive effects if you don't know this.
Okay, so that little metaphor that you gave about the shoelaces,
Yeah.
and you're talking about that plastic tip, the aglet,
Yeah.
which keeps it from unraveling. So it's like trying to thread a needle and you kind of wet it. So it keeps it intact. And the institutional racism basically degrades that.
Oh, yeah.
And the level of that degradation can impact organs, systems, and everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have another question for you, because I want you to know that it's critical that you simplify some of these things and break them down and give us some metaphors, because I'm in neurophysiology. I know what you're talking about. But the people that come to Sankofa, they read a variety of things, and we all know that Europeans hide all our truths in polysyllabic words and terminology that it's like reading something on the label of a food product that you purchase, and you're like, I know what one of these things is, but other things I don't know. So I want you to keep that in mind as you are giving people perspective about this monumental work that you've done. So here's another question. And for the record, momentarily, you all will be privileged to make comments, ask questions, so that my Baba, Usa Dr. Cooke, can expand on those things. And what he probably already knows is, I'm your wingman, but this baby was born from the loins of you, Baba Sky, and Dr. Bell, and some other little conversations that we chatted about.
Yeah.
So how do you envision awareness of such content to serve and address the collective health and mental health needs of melanin-dominant people? How do you view this application component of this document? Because, you know, a lot of us, we're wrapped up in technology now. We want shortcuts, right? So I want to know, how do you envision the application of this knowledge to help melanin-dominant people?
Okay.
And
So,
concisely.
all right. So let me answer it this way. So when I've watched programs, I've seen this is the part where they open up the book and read something. So I'm gonna open up the book and read a paragraph real quick. Oh, I was waiting for this time. Yeah, here we go.
All right, Barbara.
Okay. And also they do this so people will buy the book. So make sure you buy the book. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Poverty and racism can negatively impact epigenetic functioning and accelerate the shortening of telomeres, ultimately reducing the lifespan. The sobering linkage was brought home vividly by a study of Black American men in 2014. Our findings literally suggest that racism makes people old, the lead author commented. The same holds true for women. As part of the US-based study of women's health across the nation, acronym SWAN, the telomeres of Black and white middle-aged women were compared. The results were shocking. Black women were found, on average, to be over 7 years more biologically aged than their white counterparts, consistent with higher rates of poverty, stress, hypertension, obesity, and related health conditions. So I'll stop there.
Okay, Barbara, you see the cogency you find in the narrative that's captured in text? See?
Yeah. Okay.
Now, that's an excellent illumination of us clarifying how all these things impact our collective health.
Yeah.
Because in DC, the average African-American male is going to live 9 to 10 years less than our vanilla male colleague, and sisters are going to lose 8 to 10 years as well. And we are tied to institutional racism. So you just shared with us when you made the reference to the aglet and the telomeres, that oxidative stress, which is like corrosion, and people just, imagine you drinking your favorite soda that's really acidic, and it's like creating this froth in your mouth. So all these things are metaphorically captured in the context of this book, telling people that you're being damaged, hence your term, not knowing, all right? And so this book illuminates all those things you need to know about. So with that in mind, I just want to ask you another question, because we all know on the shoulders of our ancestors we stand, and some of our elders that are wisdom walkers now around, we're also riding on their shoulders. That's why I love it when you made reference to Ed. Ed is a godfather, one of my kids. We go way back. Ed would have probably said to Benson, all right, Benson, could you simplify that? So all of us can really grasp what you're saying. Could you try that, Benson? And see, that's what Ed would do. And Ed is excellent at doing that because he's multilingual. Now, here's your question, Bob. Are there any researchers of color that you know of who may have written, addressed, or spoke about any of the content that you're talking about now, and or co-authors that shine any light on this topic prior to you and Sky?
I'll go back to the book again, because this is really important. Where is it? This is in the first part of the
You engage your frontal lobe of your pineal gland. It'll come to you.
I got all these. It's one of these.
But you can relax. You're home, brother. I'll give you a seed, you know, like Francis was doing this for a minute. Dr. Joe DeGruy was doing it for a minute. You know, Barbara Richard King was doing it for a minute.
Okay.
So go ahead.
This is in the first part of the book also. In the first part of the book, really what we're doing is defining epigenetics and epigenomics so that people can really understand the terminology. And when I'm teaching, I use multimedia. I have video clips and things, and I come up with, you know, all these kind of creative ways of thinking and perceiving things so that people can know. So my brain is going in several places.
No, but it's because you're so deep, Barbara.
Yeah, no.
Just relax. Go with the flow.
So think about this. And this is just really kind of amazes me. In the night sky, we see bright lights. We call those what? Stars. And those stars are actually what? Suns. Okay? When those suns die, the matter in those suns travels throughout the universe, right? We are composed of all of that. The major difference is that we, in our composition, have the ability to think and reason. Now, what's important about this is to understand when I said earlier we are magnificently and marvelously made. We are these biological, physiological, neurological, neurochemical, genetic beings composed of proteins, the building blocks of life. And what's powerful about that is that epigenomics talks about or focuses on the capacity to create a design for living that is, in some instances, microscopic. You got to look at it in a microscope. But it's so powerful. But here's the kicker. The kicker is that what we do shapes it. Okay? So let me give one quick example, then I'm going to go and answer the question. And I like to give personal stories. So, because we're home, this family. So a few years back, I was, so I'm going to do this, I won't lose the page.
And so give the brother the favor, the benefit. Usually you would have a bunch of slides,
Right.
things like that. So going down, dig into that brain, you got to activate that melanin core, cough it up.
So a few years back, I used to have to see my ophthalmologist every 3 months because the pressure in my eye was building up. It was really getting bad. So my visit was never more than 5 to 10 minutes. I go in, he put the drops behind me, put the light on, he put you on the machine, say, okay, I'll see you in 3 months. But I went this one time and the visit changed. And the visit changed because he turned around suddenly and asked me a question. What have you done? Now in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, he's about to tell me I'm going to need major eye surgery and I'm going to go blind. I'm already having difficulty. I can't hear good anymore. So now I won't be able to see good. So he kept asking me the question. I'm like freaking out, like tears are going down my eyes, not only from what he put in, but just fear. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Tell me what you need to know. He said, what I'm looking at that used to be a problem is gone. What have you done? And I was like, oh, okay. Could it be, I'm like a game show now. Could it be like what I've taken in my body? Yes. I said, well, I stopped eating cookies, cake, pie, sugar, and candy. He said, that's it. Now, how many minutes did I say our appointments used to last? 5 to 10 minutes. He spoke to me for 45 minutes. You know, white Jewish guy said, so let me tell you, before I became an ophthalmologist, I was an emergency room surgeon at Johns Hopkins. I used to work with a large black population. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even do black people other than me coming there. So we went on to talk about all this stuff, you know. And so then I started thinking about, a month prior to that visit, almost 2 months prior, my daily routine, working at the University of District of Columbia, I go to the bookstore. I get my mom's chocolate candy bar, my dark chocolate Hershey's candy bar, my 8-pack of pecan rolls, and my sweet tea. If you lived in Georgia, you like sweet tea. Then I stop over at Starbucks right next door, and they say, hey, get Doc some coffee for his sugar. Because I get a regular glass of coffee, cup of coffee, and put 10 bags of sugar in it. So I be waiting for my class. Amen to the professors. I see my roommate now, Dr. James Shulier. We know we got to do, get ready. So then on the way home, I'd stop at Wegmans and I pick up my lemon frosted archway cookies. Can't go to bed without that. And my Twix double chocolate candy bar.
Now, when do you stop doing this, Baba?
Hold on, I'm getting to this.
Yeah, I just want to help you out here.
Okay, we're talking to family, so I'm breaking this down.
Go ahead. All right.
So then I would always end with a small apple pie. So one night I did that and I just passed out. Woke up. And sometimes you just get on the computer, I just started surfing. And I saw this guy say, yeah, I stopped eating sugar and this would happen to me. I was like, oh, that's bullshit. That's BS. But I did it. I just said, I'm gonna try this. So here I am back at my appointment.
Mm-hmm.
After 2 months of having done this, I cold turkeyed it because I wanted to always believe my mind is stronger than anything else. And so he tells me, he said, sugar causes inflammation. What I've been seeing growing over the past 5 years in your eyes is gone. I was like, well, how did that happen? As now I'm drying my eyes. He said, you just said it. You stopped eating those things. So I said, but how did that happen? I'm still, so that caused me to really begin to study the role of processed foods and sugar.
And again, how long ago was that?
That was probably about, before the pandemic, probably about 2015, 2016, about 2016.
2015, 2016, now we're in 2025. We're almost a decade later. The reason why I'm injecting is because I'm moderating. And the bottom line is, I want you to be mindful that he shared with you 5 to 10 minute visit. And I'm assuming this is an ophthalmologist, right?
Ophthalmologist.
Okay. Yeah. And now the ophthalmologist, was this a vanilla Jewish ophthalmologist?
Yeah, man.
Okay. So this vanilla Jewish ophthalmologist had these peekaboo visits with you, looking at your optics.
Yeah, never knew
right?
People.
And never, let me finish, Baba. Yeah. And did not give this brother any information until he realized the brother had taken a deep dive into looking at your own genetic constitution, unbeknownst to you, as I said, Baba Jokanan and Tony Browder said, remember putting yourself back together. That's Sankofa. Look back and look within. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, but I want you all to be mindful. I hope you don't mind me saying the term, Sister Kathy, you back me one on the radio program on H Street, because you can't say the N-word, right? But I'm just going to say it to illustrate a point. There was a book written called the Nigger Bible. And one of the themes in the Nigger Bible is whenever you're talking to little brothers and sisters answering their questions, the conversations are brief. But whenever you tell them what you've done, that's counter to what they've been telling you, the conversations go on and on. So the brother was milking you from your internal genetic wisdom. And I'm pleased to know that your genes have begun to talk to you, because you were a junkie then, right?
Oh, yeah, big time.
You were a junkie.
But let me just say this.
Okay, go right ahead. You go right ahead, Bob.
But I think I had no other vices. I mean, I didn't get high, I didn't drink.
No, that's education. We're going to come to the next question. That's training.
Let me have my sugar.
No, that's rationalization. That's why black people used to say there were some blues singers that sang some songs about sugar diabetes. They call it sweet urine, right? So I just want you to know, we're clear, Baba. Now I'm going to ask you another question, because these people have some questions.
I want to answer the first part of the other question.
Oh, go ahead, Baba.
Okay. All right. So the question was there anybody else who'd ever done this? So in the book, we have somebody that is on a U.S. stamp, and you probably don't even know it. His name is Ernest Everett Just.
That's the first brother to do that stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, he was the first one, early 20th century, And so we have the picture of the stamp and the picture of him and a brief story. So
That's the beauty of the book. Not only is it talking to you about the biology and the neurophysiology, it's talking to you about the information that was omitted. So it kind of chronicles those things. That's great. And all that relates to your epigenetics, which is riding on top of the genes. Now, the great creator, the great spirit God, Goddess does not make mistakes. All right? So prior to us talking about what you're talking about, vanilla people used to tell you about something called, what do they call it? They said junk DNA. But there's nothing in you that's junk. So here's the question, because these people are going to have some comments and questions momentarily. Why should practitioners and mental health providers include this material in their mental archives so that they can modify their intervention protocols? So why should practitioners and mental health providers include this material in their mental health archives so that they can provide modified intervention protocols? Do you understand me?
yeah, I understand. So let me answer by first saying, I always like to hear y'all say, it's you, because I went to Morehouse.
No way.
House. Okay.
I went to
Professor at Morehouse. I went to House at Howard. That's how I went.
No, but I also went to A&T and Fisk University.
Yeah.
All of that.
All right.
Go ahead.
So I think I heard your question. I'm kind of turning it into something else. One of the things that I felt was important is that when we're trained in Western medical model approaches, we often don't pay attention to complementary approaches
There you
that
go,
come
Bobby.
from other locations. And so what I wanted to do was to make sure of two things. One is that wherever geneticists are talking about Black folk, psychologists and others, but mostly psychologists, need to be at that table. And whenever we're talking about our people and they are interested, they need to come to our table to hear our point of view, our perspective, our data, our research on what it is that we're doing. So that was one of the key pieces of why we put the book together the way that we did, and why, begging my forgiveness, Queen Sister Ayo, we took more pages than we had promised we would give you, because we wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything, because we thought, oh, we'll leave this out and come back later. No. The one thing that I appreciate about the work that we did is we've got 90 some pages. She could tell you the exact number.
80.
80, okay. 80 pages of references. And so I said, if somebody wants to argue with me, my first thing is going to be, have you read the book? Yes. Have you read the citations? Well, of course. Have you read the references to the citations? Yes. Okay. Have you read the footnotes? Yeah. Have you read the citations to the footnotes? Okay. The is enough. Go back and read. Then after you've done all of that, you don't really need to talk with me, because you'll have all the answers.
Okay, now I'm going to drop something on you. Given the current climate that we're navigating as melanin dominant people, I always say melanin dominant because vanilla people, you know, they're sidebar of us and they don't even know that, and hyper's the whole 9 yards, right? So I want to say to you, Baba, just to concretize and crystallize the relevance of this particular book, this text in today's time, what do you think melanin dominant people really need to know most about themselves to navigate this current climate in terms of what you've been talking about, a lot of terms, oxidative stress, institutional racism, and it's in our face right now, and they're getting away with it, right? So what would you suggest that melanin dominant people do if they were going to extract something from this book that they could use? What would you identify as a kernel, a morsel that would contribute to their longevity, that would contribute to their resilience to navigate this society?
Okay. So I'm kind of touching on something I already said. So
That's why I want you to really
connect the dots. My specialty, anybody remember what my specialty is in psychology?
You're teaching again.
Depression. Okay. All right. So one of the things I learned is that sugar, more specifically, but other processed foods are a leading cause to not only depression, but Alzheimer's. That's number one. Number two, the other is, and I was guilty of this. There's a brother here who used to always at ABC do these presentations on nutrition, and I'd be like sitting in the back because I needed to see credits, but I wasn't really paying attention. So I started doing the research.
Who was that brother? Is he over there?
Where are you? There he is, right there. Everybody look at him right there. All right. He came all the way from Philadelphia here. Okay. I apologize to
Bob,
her.
drop your name in the equation so it'll be in the audible archives of our ancestors. So drop that name. All right, Bob. See, he knows me.
Yeah. Okay. So I've already apologized and bowed down and made humble apologies because once I started doing the research, I was like, I need to go from the back of the room to the front of the room.
All right, go ahead, Bob.
And just really began to understand how the things that we do have such a profound impact. At the same time, toxic environments. Now, this one, again, 2 stories, real quick. If you remember Hurricane Katrina, at the time, I was on the board with ABSI, and having been a former resident, if you're from New Orleans, if not New Orleans, when I was at State University, I was very concerned about what was happening. So myself, Kevin Coakley, Wade Nobles put together the first ever cultural response for first responders and disaster relief that the American Red Cross and APA decided to utilize. What's interesting about that, I bring it up for this point, when the waters receded from the floods, they said, oh, look at all of the toxicity of lead. Now we understand why in certain wards, young people were doing so poorly in school. Mm-hmm. From that came the research that basically showed that when you're looking at schools where there's a high rate of aggression, are you near a toxic waste site? Because the research basically showed that that also has a profound impact. So again, go from intergenerational to transgenerational. And we begin to see the things that happen. For example, this final piece, looking at animal studies. So basically we looked at animal studies, especially rat studies, and we looked at disasters like famines and things like that where data is collected, but the animal studies. With rat studies, they show that the mother rats who do not nurture their pups, those pups then have difficulty dealing with anxiety and anger. Anger turned inwards causes depression. So then we began to look at kind of looking at that and kind of bringing it to how we understand people. And that became really interesting to me because think about it. In those early years of us being human trafficked here, the mama couldn't raise her own kids because they would be sold off to some other plantation. But she had to take care of master's kids. And so here we have generation after generation that has been not only culturally conditioned, but epigenomically conditioned to a poor state of health. But yet we fall for, being bamboozled oftentimes in our community that if you just lift yourself up by your own bootstrap. When the reality is that when you look at the science, there's an explanation for a lot of what happens. And so it's a disruptive effect of not knowing that. So that is another piece to this awareness. And so we just wanted we documented everything we could do. And to take it a step further, if I may again point to one other.
Go ahead, Bob, because I'm getting ready to drop this on the family.
All right. Okay. One of the things that we spend a lot of emphasis on, placed a lot of emphasis, not spent a lot of emphasis, is when you get to part 2. Part 2 is defining our humanity beyond race, Black knowing and understanding. And we use the Akan symbol Shweshwamdua, which is a measuring rod. Why measuring rod? Because race is a social construct. There were these Europeans who decided they would do a human taxonomy the same way they did one with insects, animals, and mammals. Taxonomy is we want to kind of make comparisons from the lesser to the more sophisticated. And they decided, in terms of doing the human one, to make themselves at the top and put Black folk at the bottom. But when you put Black men and women at the bottom, who's at the absolute bottom? The Black woman. So what we do is we talk about, I give you the whole history of when they did it, why they did it, how they did it, and what the impact of it is today. because we really need to not just know it. My mom used to say, son, there's a difference between knowing a thing and understanding it. You can know a lot about something and not really understand it. You can say you know math, but if you can't make change or do the tip, then you really don't understand it. And if you lack understanding, you can never be aware. So the book is a key to unlock your awareness to this.
All right, Baba. So listen up, people. Let's see if there are any among the family that have some questions that they'd like to drop on us. And because the level of the light is kind of awkward, I see the sister in the middle there because the lights are on us like
Yeah, we can't see y'all. We just see shadows.
Sister right there with the hand. You can go right ahead, my dear. Somebody need to take on mic or what?
Yeah, it's a back right here. It was one. Yeah. Make sure it's on.
Sante Sana, Baba.
Yeah. And make sure that if it's a question for him, give it to him.
Listen, you guys have noticed I wasn't sure because you ask this Baba anything, all right?
Well, it's for everyone.
I'm your wingman. You're the pilot. Go ahead, talk to the brother.
Hello, Dr. Cooke. Thanks
Yes.
for being here today. In terms of Black maternal health, I definitely plan to get your book, but what are some things in the book that might help address new Black people before we even get here? Those mothers, the mothers to be that, we're, as a mom myself, I remember way back in the day taking the vitamins, all that good stuff.
Mhm.
I did not worry about my stress level. I didn't think about my mental health. And that was more than 20 years ago.
Mhm.
So what can we do to help Black moms now with
Okay,
information
so
in your book?
So this is something that we're going to share an answer to. I'll give it to you this way. If you look at the studies, no, okay,
Go ahead, Baba.
okay. If you look at the animal studies we talk about in the book, one of the interesting ones talked about how nurturing had a profound impact on the plasticity of the brain. Explain that.
You see how this brother wrote the book. Now he want me to break this stuff up.
Break it down. You're the neuroscientist. Go break it down.
See, that's some really unique dynamics. Okay, but in a nutshell, you're setting the stage now for the secret life of an unborn child. The sister's asking you a question about what you can do. And if you have that in the book, you should let her know where it is. But the bottom line is, there's two types of neuroplasticity, positive and negative. You've been talking about epigenetics a lot. But the bottom line is, if you are not rubbing your tummy, spending that lap time with your baby, you know how sisters get when they get with a child, because your baby tells you what to eat, what not to eat, ankle swell up, your throat, all that type of thing, right? So the bottom line is, he's telling you epigenetically, the environment will undermine the ability of your child to be born with optimal potential for his brain to develop properly. So you leave those terms alone like neuroplasticity. I'm a neuroscientist, and this is his show. I'm supposed to be his wingman. You follow me? So you go and add whatever you like to add to that, Bobby.
So what I uncovered is that relate, like anytime I'm talking to my classes or whatever, you always hear me say, my mama said, because I'm celebrating the fact that even though she passed away in the 90s and left me with that decision about how not to get what she had taught me so many other lessons. And so being engaged in the lesson teaching of life with your child while providing it in a loving, caring, showing value manner, and reminding me of my history. She would always say, you need to know who and whose you are. She would say to me, son, when you go out into that world, you need to be 200% prepared. And I'm trying to be all, smart, like 200%. I thought it was only 100%. What's 200%? She said, the first 100% is when they see you. So again, well, what's the second 100%? She said, son, that's what I taught you. And what I'm about to teach you, if you don't change that tone. So the point being that how you engage is more than just a social, psychological thing. It's an epigenomic thing. And that's the part that really kind of like had me go, what?
I'm going to break that word down for you guys. Let me ask this brother a question. He keeps talking about epigenomics. It's a big word called psycho. Let me finish, Baba. Because you asked me to help you, so let me do this, right?
Okay.
So let me do it, Baba.
Okay, I'll do it.
No, I'm trying to do what you asked me to do.
Okay, go ahead.
Psychoneuroimmunology is the term that vanilla people used to hide all this stuff in. And psychoneuroimmunology means, like, if you were a child and you're in a toxic relationship, your body's going to have more oxidative stress. And that's going to undermine the viability of your brain to develop properly. plus all that stuff he's telling you about foods you should not be eating, that's also going to undermine the positive neuroplasticity of your baby. Because you know, babies, when they have a big head, right? They sit up, they'll fall over because the encephalocaudal development, this develops first. So, Baba, you can punctuate, but these other folk, they're going to ask questions. The nurturing environment is critical, but it's absolutely mind-blowing to try to navigate life when you're living in a maternal desert, dealing with institutional structural racism. So that's it. And when we are formally, officially done, I think at some point we're going to petition Sankofa to allow us to have something like a think tank every now and then, because I'm a neuroscientist, and this Bible's not telling you. I've been a vegan ever since I crawled out of rooms to get teased for not having meat at Boy Scout events. You feel me? So we'll chat about that another time. But I want to make sure that these other people ask their questions in their comments. And this, whenever you want me to like shut up and seal and respond to something, just do like that, and I got you. But don't ask me to plug into the wing of the plane and we're losing altitude, and then tell me that I need to cut the daggone plane down and start dropping the flaps on the plane, because we're gonna crash.
All right, so just a final point to answer the question, if I may, is that what epigenomics or gene expression conveyed to me is that it's almost never too late to create a change. You know, I've always been very concerned about underserved, low wealth populations and getting information to them. And so the way we write the book is in a language that could be understood, which is also why it's so large, because we wanted to break everything down, maybe say it 2 or 3 times, so that with examples, so that there could be clarity. But for me, especially toward the latter part of the book, we're providing a lot of examples of things that you can do, from the physiological to the psychological to the neurological, to all the way even to the neurochemical, in terms of understanding how the things that you eat have an impact on that, even to the most profound, what my mama always taught me to understand when she said, remember who and whose you are, is understanding the creative force of the universe, understanding God, understanding spirituality, you know? And so that's why, and I was going to say it earlier, I kind of chose the cover that I did, because I wanted to emphasize that this goes from everything back to the spiritual. Okay? We are truly, we're wonderfully made, but there are things that we must do to avoid the disruptive effects of not knowing.
And that's Sasa and Zamani. This Baba had a question here. Then I'm going to come back to the and the sister here. Then A, B, C, and D. You D. A, and you all remember your letter, okay? So drop your question. That's the Baba.
This is in reference to page 227 in social media.
Uh-oh.
One of the things I'm aware of is that if you look at some of the television shows from the 1970s and 80s versus now, a lot of them has some type of anti-epigenetic awareness in the character and plot development. So has anybody done research in terms of mapping out the impact of the social propagation of those factors?
So let's follow her rule. So go into your book, because I know her rule. So you go into your book and you give him what he needs to get the question. Remember your letter, all right? He was A, and then B, C, and D, okay? So let's do this. Talk to the brother, Benson. And don't you dare point at me.
No. I'm sorry. I'm thinking, I'm looking at this book, and all of a sudden the title has escaped me. But I know that the Association of Black Journalists has kind of dealt with this to a very large extent in terms of how they have written journal articles and things, which, by the way, a side note, you hear us talking about Dr. Kim Bell, and you're saying, well, why is her name? I mean, we do an acknowledgement of her, but to get to this book, we did countless journal articles, news journal articles that were refereed, and other kinds of things that led to us putting this together. But to answer your question is, it's going to come to me. All of a sudden, I'm at a blank. But I can't believe
I
it.
tell you what, we're going to give the Baba a moment to collect, because the universe pineal gland resonance collects everything. So who has the letter B? You ask your question, then we're going to go to C and D, all right? And we're going to give you time to tune in. All right?
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to page for you. So go right ahead.
Thank you for this important talk. My question was in regards to the difference or distinction or correlation between eugenics and epigenomics. I mean, does it like feed into the other? Because what I understand you saying is that there are external whether it's structural racism, blah, 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 or or genetic factors that play into negative outcomes, whether it be if you're expressing depression, if you're criminal behavior, things of this nature. And then I'm thinking about the whole argument of like eugenics and what that meant. And I'm just trying to figure out the distinction. Like, so yeah, that was my question.
All right. So and he's my wingman on this.
Yeah, right.
So
I didn't write this book. I'm not in this book. Go ahead, Bobby.
Right. So I'm gonna try to say this as simple as I can. Okay. So the DNA, that's the amino acids that basically are the compounds that create the proteins. So it's A, C, G, and T.
Yeah, you just.
Yeah. It's my wingman. All right. These are the things that determine what we often call phenotype, genotype, like your height, your eyes, your hair. We also sometimes have other things that we refer to as illnesses that may be inherited and things like that. So I always like to include me. So side note, anybody who knows me knows I have hearing aids, especially for my left ear. Way back they said, oh, you must have inherited that. But I've been to several family reunions and nobody else got a hearing loss like me. So, go figure. I kind of figured that something else must have happened. But maybe it's epigenomic. It could be. I don't know. But so you think of, okay, let's use music.
But did she just ask you about eugenics? Didn't you say
No, she
eugenics?
wanted to know genetics and epigenetics. Am I correct?
No, she said eugenics, Bobby. Eugenics. You know the stuff.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear you.
Let me punctuate for you while you regroup it. The eugenics, i.e. that vanilla brothers and sisters got from here, that you guys think came from Nazi Germany. Now you got eugenics in here. So respond to her question, because I don't want to be your
man. Yeah, that's a deep one right there.
I'll come to you back momentarily.
So, that's why he's my wingman. All right. So, interesting story. Nuremberg trials. Nuremberg trials, for anyone who's not familiar, were the trials that were held in Nazi Germany after the decline of Nazi Germany for war crimes against the world that the Nazis carried out. Most of their science was based upon eugenics, or the pseudoscientific idea of one race being superior to another. And they did lots of different things, like deprive people of being able to have children because of that, called sterilization, stuff like that. What's interesting, and this is a side note to it, is that when they were on trial and they were trying to determine how did you come to this crazy conclusion, who did they point to? The United States. In other words, every idea that they got to do what they did, they got from here in terms of stuff that was done on us. So Medical Apartheid is a book written by Harriet Washington. It's a must read if you have not read it. I caution my students, when you read that book, read it with someone else, because you see some crazy stuff in it that triggers the trauma of our past. Case in point, the man who was considered to be the father of gynecology, he developed his skills on enslaved African women. And what he would do was engage in multiple surgeries with no anesthesia. And the reason, he said, was Black women don't feel pain. They just complaining, they just honoring. But it got so bad that even his fellow white surgeons said, we can't do this. So he would force enslaved women to hold the women down who went through these multiple surgeries. Okay? But to understand children, they did the same thing to Black children. So eugenics is this pseudoscientific idea that they have a right to just mess with human beings because of the taxonomy that they created around the social construct of race that suggested that we were less than. It is no science in it at all.
Okay, so back to the eugenics piece. The eugenics, literally in a nutshell, translated literally into exterminating melanin-dominant people through a progression of systematic decimating people, okay?
Yeah.
Like literally. Don't think about the Federal in Nazi Germany. Matter of fact, it's going on right now, okay?
Yeah.
When they lock up the brothers and the sperm donors and the whole nine yards. But We can peekaboo back to your question a little bit later because I know some components that you built into that question because Benson didn't understand what you said originally.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
But so where's question C? Go ahead, Barbara. Drop your question or your comment. You know, this light does something to you. Melatonin dominant people just absorb all the light. Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, great presentation. Certainly learned a lot.
Sorry.
You mentioned the abscess or the ceasing of sugar and ultra-processed foods and helping people to be healthier. Let's go the opposite. What food plan helps people become healthier?
Leafy foods, grain foods. You know, this is something that's really the things that you can grow have a profound impact on gaining and sustaining optimal health. And so one of the things that we do in the book is we kind of go through some of this so that people can get a better sense of what's going on. We talk about the importance of learning how to grow. For example, the University of District of Columbia, we have the College of Agriculture and Urban Sustainability. I have worked with them to go into DC, certain areas like my church, Union Temple Baptist Church in Southeast DC, where they've grown, and we grow food. We teach people how to grow. We teach people how to plant, how to grow, how to harvest, how to sell it, how to cook it. So being able to do all of those things. Now, for those people who are over 50, you did this at Big Mama and Grandmama's house because they always had a garden. And they make you go out in the garden and pull some stuff up. And you go, I don't eat that. I want McDonald's. No, you don't eat this. And they made it. They showed you how to can. Remember they had those jars? They can foods and things. I wish I could see everybody, but I can't. But just say amen, hallelujah if you hear. You got what I'm saying? Amen? Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, there we go. So that's something that we have to kind of go back to and recognize that we have to kind of define our reality. Here's a little quote I had in here. I have to look it up because I have so many. Hold on.
He's also telling you in a nutshell, brother, if it was white rice, white sugar, white flour, white milk, leave it the blank alone. You feel me? And if you got a juicer, juice. If you got a bonafide blender, blend things. And if the food had parents, the probability of it really being good for you is diminished sevenfold.
Yeah. And if you like me, I love salmon, but I don't do farm salmon because farm salmon, they have to dye the color to make it look like real salmon. Plus, it's eating its own poop. Wild salmon has to go through the process of life, which is connected, but that's a whole different thing. So here's what I say here. I said, until we define our reality, we will always be and always act in accordance with how we've been defined by others.
Okay, so where is D? Well, you see? Okay, I need C, then I need D. Okay, with your question or your comment. I think C and D. What's your letter? D. Okay, well, C is back there. I thought I saw C. Well, go ahead, top D. Do D, all right?
First, I want to say thank you so much for this. This has really been great. And I want to make really a comment and then ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
My father died at 37 and all of his siblings, heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
When I became 37, I had heart disease and was in the hospital and they wanted to do a bypass. And so I said no. And I started reading. I came across this book, Dean Ornish, and y'all know the book. Okay.
Keep talking.
And so I changed everything, basically diet, and became a vegan before people even knew what a vegan was. And I did it for 10 years. I am now 72 years old.
You're beautiful.
72.
Yes.
72. No heart disease. And it took a lot. It was difficult making that transition, the food transition. But I kept working at it until I was able to do it. And I thank you so much for this. I can't wait to read the book.
Yes. If I can,
Bible, go right ahead, Bible.
So that was the story I didn't tell, but before going any further, for you guys who are trying to say, oh, find out and get her number. So she is the wife of my former roommate from Morehouse College. And we will both be in your face. Dr. Hardin, truly, okay.
Okay, but she also was
But I want to, what your story is my story. In my family, on my mother's side is diabetes and kidney disease, took them all out. On my father's side was heart disease and cancer. So my older sister, she's been in a nursing home. She's had stroke diabetes. My twin, stroke diabetes. My younger, diabetes and recently cancer. I'm not a favorite child in terms of why I don't have it and they do. But I go back to that early story. My mama said, son, you don't want this. Don't drink, don't smoke, eat right, exercise, get your rest, and do not hang around crazy people that stress you out. Okay? And it really makes a difference. It really makes a difference.
Okay, but the comment that you were sharing about I'm assuming that had to do with coronary heart disease and the propensity, because coronary heart disease, when you get the plaque, like little speed humps build up into the vascular network. And so when you change your diet, like Benson said, when he got all the poison out of his diet, those little speed humps begin to slowly degrade and go away. And then you kind of reinforce the endothelial of the cell lining, and it became smoother. So that's why you still maintain black don't crack, all right? But we just need to put that in perspective, because that's clearly related to epigenetics. You doing that because you have a propensity, like black people will say, I have diabetes running my family. And I'm like, well, who gave her the shoes? You feel me? So where, I mean, really, because it only runs in the family because you eat the same junk. So where is the other question or comment? And you stop calling me your wingman. This is your book, Bobby. So go right ahead. I see a hand up back there with a beautiful smile.
Dr. Sean Coleman's hand. I see him.
Okay, go ahead, Bobby.
And by the way, he's one of the professional reviewers for the book.
All right.
Testing.
Yeah, okay.
Great to see both of you. It's been a while. You know, BQ, Big Brother Benson, I remember 15 years ago, you sat me down. You didn't even know me hardly at the time, and you talked to me about men's health, right? I came to the psychology department at the University of the District of Columbia. Hi, my name is Sean Coleman. I'm coordinating this human development program, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you said, brother, and you closed the door, and we had an extended conversation about men's health, and you made sure that I took care of my health, right? 15 years later, of course, you were, a renowned author then, but 15 years later, you've written several books, and you're here now, spreading the word, the good word. How do we get this? I know you talked about in-service and how in-service professionals should be including this into their practices. But if I'm telling my faculty and my students, this book needs to be a part of your curriculum, what curriculum? Where? How will we roll this out?
Oh, man, that's a good question.
See right there, Bobby.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Well, okay. See, you're a wingman.
Yeah, go ahead,
So,
Bobby.
all right. What would you add?
No, Bobby, this brother knows you go with that. They know me too. I'm trying to take a low profile, but you point every now and then when you get in the zone. You feel me?
The sister's right there, Sister Ayo, and Sankofa's right here. And if you want to push that, all you need to do is crack hard, tell them to put it in your blackboard, put this book there, order the book, get the book lined up for your students. And I'm telling you now, it's a piece of work. You feel me? It's a comprehensive piece of work. And you cannot talk about epigenetics without talking about the etiology, the origin of all the lies that vanilla brothers and sisters told. So here's Sister Ayo right now. Go right ahead, clarify.
Thank you, Coco. You guys are I know, you're both so hilarious. You really should take the show on the road. Really. Right? Great question. And thank you so much for being a professional reviewer. As you know, peer review, like you mentioned, referencing, indexing, all of that. Those are layers that's required for academic peer reviewed work that are not required for other type of genre of publication. So it's really serious business. But to your question, Universal Right Publication, we created a curriculum guide, and it's free on our website for download under resources on the website. It's a curriculum guide that tells you every book that we publish, how you use them, what classes they're good for, and how to implement them in your syllabus and your guidelines. And it's free for anyone who wants to use it. And if you're a scholar or a professor and you're interested in using any of our books, you can also request a faculty copy review guide. So.
I told you she was right there. See, listen over here, like, give it up. Process. Dr. Io was a high. There's a sister right here that has a CEO. He's with the right publication. Yeah. HU, Baba. HU. So go ahead, my sister. Morehouse. No. Y'all keep singing in the choir. Y'all keep singing in the choir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Cooke, and to Universal Right Publication, Dr. Ayo, for this very important talk.
Hey,
And
put that lovely voice in the mic so we can pick up the rest of this.
Thank you is what I'm saying. Thank you, Dr. Cooke, and thank you, Universal Right Publication, for this sacred platform. This is going to tie into my question. So I really appreciated the question about scholars ahead of you who have done similar work, because I wanted to know what your thoughts are about the role of, I'm not going to pronounce this word right, but epistemological barriers. So, the control of knowledge production, about that influences what information gets shared, what comes out, and not to sound like a disgruntled graduate student and Black scholar. Your work really resonated with me because my dissertation looked at biomarkers of chronic stress, gender racism for Black women. And, we ran into barriers with my thesis. We looked at cortisol, had significant findings around cortisol as a biomarker of gender racism, and salivary alpha amylase for my dissertation. And so I said all that to say, I wonder what your thoughts are about the role of, barriers to knowledge production and getting the word out. And another reason why I really appreciate Universal Right Publication for having a space like this to bring voice to these important topics.
Did you hear her, Baba?
Some of it.
Yeah, you heard her, Baba. You're not going to point to me and call me your wingman.
So and again, some of it I think I got, some of it is my fault.
Respond to the part that you got, and I'll watch it back on the part that you didn't hear, okay?
Okay. I think that it's imperative, especially if you're doing anything to enhance the well-being of our people, that you interrogate and question everything. And that in doing so, if you can collaborate with someone who is in sync with the direction that you want to go in, that you reach out and do that. When I go back and tell you about after the radio program, a colleague of mine literally set up a meeting with someone that they said, you need to talk with this person. You need to connect with this person and make and kind of interrogate and question what's going on to move in your direction. But then, if I say but then negates, and then what you need to do is step out on courage. Because when I first decided I would approach Sky about doing this, the only cheerleader, as I said, was Dr. Bell.
You sure about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you.
Yeah, see how he kind of like just put that out about, right?
No, but I'm saying in terms of, okay, let me clarify so that when I said we have to do the work, we had to do research. We had to start pulling up everything we could. We did a meta-analysis. So Dr. Coleman, I remember I contacted him, Dr. Kimball, I mentioned it to you.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Right.
I pulled in another young person who was a student scholar of mine, Neil Williams, and we basically said, okay, we got to get to work. We sat in a room and we said, okay, they were looking at me, okay, where do we begin? I'm like, I don't know, but we got to begin looking at what's there. So it meant we had to read, pull up, make connections with other people who were doing the work. And so whatever you need to do to fulfill the purpose for which you are born. Again, Morehouse fan, you go to those people like Howard Thurman, we're really spiritual beings on a human journey, and human beings on a spiritual journey. You're
And she made reference to cortisol as being an inflammatory marker.
Yeah.
And cortisol is specifically going to create what you've been talking about all along with epigenomics. It's going to undermine positive neuroplasticity of the brain. It's going to create atmospheres in your body for cardiovascular events. It's going to create a condition in your body to make you prone to have gastrointestinal cancer, early prostate cancer, and early mimicking diseases that look like what they call Alzheimer's, which isn't really just always Alzheimer's, it's dementia in general. Also create an atmosphere in your body conducive for a variety of cancers that are dancing around under rubric-free radicals. That's why I'm jacking him talking about his wingman. We used to chat about stuff like this. You feel me? Let me finish, Bob, because you said the part that you heard is the part that I heard. Now, the part that I heard relating to the brain and the development, and he told you to go out on the ledge, not on the ledge. Be mindful. Whenever you're in academia, you have to play a game. Otherwise, you will not get out of academia. They will undermine your ability and your oxidative stress will increase. You will either get depressed, wind up having some other kind of problems with your body, because that's how the system of racism and white supremacy works. They create gatekeepers to suppress people that want to do research like you do. I would also encourage you to align yourself with people that you know there is a synergism, as opposed to someone that wants to exploit and use you to run back and forth to the library and then co-opt your work and claim it as theirs. So you have to know how to play the game, and it is definitely a game, but it's a game of 4-stage chess. And I'll break that down some other time. So listen, there was another question or comment, and so this brother, I'm gonna beat it behind when we go outside, all right? Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, but with that latest one, if I didn't answer it totally when we're done, come back to me. But everything he just said is really important, and it kind of brought me to this understanding. It is a game. I at the university, I've made a decision to serve on committees that gave me insights to the game, to help me understand how deans perceived, how chairs perceived, having been a former chair myself. Within the professional identity, one of the things I learned from Dr. Thomas Parham, Black psychologist, is that we have to become social engineers. While we're educated in the silo of a professional identity, we have to learn to reach outside of that and to reconnect with other areas, so that even though my background in terms of education is in psychology, here I am writing and talking about epigenomics, which takes me into a different realm, but it's all inextricably interconnected. Okay, the other part, real quick, is I always go out of my way to connect with those who have the vision to help guide me through the path that I need to take to get to where I want to go. Because again, there are gatekeepers there, and the gatekeepers oftentimes are playing politics for their own best interest, which is often against your best interest. So being able to know how to define what you do in a way that they cannot deconstruct. So I learned to deconstruct what they had and construct what I needed, but to understand also how to deconstruct what they were doing. And so there's a way to do that, and I can talk with you about that.
He needs to know that we're on the same team, okay? We're on the same team, okay?
Yeah.
Now, there was another question or
Yes.
comment that someone had.
Hello, my name is Roberto. I'm from Chile.
Roberto, you're from Chile.
Yes, I'm from
I
Chile.
should have
and-
brought my cajon drum for you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, first, I don't call myself Latino because Latino was a word that the oppressor gave to me here in America. So I never was a Latino until I arrived here. So, but yeah, my question is, I come from my ancestors. They were indigenous people who were warriors, and they never were conquered, but we were oppressed for 500 years for the conquistador, right? And then years later, 60 years ago, came a coup d'etat in Chile, supported by USA. It was the dictator Pinochet who violated human rights, and my father was in a camp of concentration and torture, and then escaped. So this, I've been living generations to generations to generations for trauma and oppression and stress. And even today in America, right, people who's not considered illegal or legal immigrant is persecuted like KKK has type of thing today. So it's constantly epigenomics thing, and so it makes me feel so sometimes anger, right? And today, more than I've been doing capoeira, which is a African-Brazilian martial art. And I've been doing capoeira for over 20 years. I become a contramaster of capoeira. I teach in Wheaton. But this is the art of resistance that I developed only like 30 years ago. But probably something's happened in me, epigenomics, was my father
and my ancestor that I was born like a warrior. I was born to resist and fight against this system, what today we call capital system, white supremacy system, you know. And it's sad that I don't see more people, which is considered Latino, which I don't like that word, but this book is so interesting that everybody should be aware of epigenomics awareness. So my question is, this book will help me? Yeah, right? I just question myself, but yes, I just want to say that I feel really interested in the book, and I'm sure even if I'm not a Black person, it will help me a lot.
You want to handle that quickly, and then I'll punctuate it for you.
Yeah. I believe this book will help you. I believe that the struggles that Black folks have endured is unique in the annals of history. And for those who are struggling under the knee of colonial powers, this is something that can be very, I think, informative. I just recently came back from New Zealand, where I had an invitation to talk with the Maori people. And what really surprised me was that they were already reading about Black psychology, and it just so happened that I have a younger sister who's a Fulbright scholar that was there in Australia working with indigenous populations, and they just said, "Hey, do you know this Benson Cooke is the same name like yours?" And I said, "Yeah, that's my brother." And so they said, "Well, you think he'll come here?" She called me, and I'm like, "Hell, to yes, I'll be there." So that I went there, and what was really amazing to me was how similar the struggle is. And I've also worked in England with the indigenous populations while in England, those who are now ancestors were clearly like second generation immigrants from Africa or the Caribbean, and I've been able to work with them. So I've had an opportunity to work with other populations so that I feel comfortable that saying that even though the focus here is on Black African Americans, we're also looking at the diaspora itself. And so it does hit on that. And I always remind people to be mindful that when we talk about certain countries, like, for example, Egypt, the people who were originally there called their place Kemet. They called themselves Kemetic. But now we use Egypt, which is Greek for Egyptos, which is burnt face. So, I mean, a lot of things get distorted in their taxology of how they want to name things. They never name things correctly to begin with. So the goal of the book is to begin to recognize how we need to define our own reality rather than have it defined by others. And then begin to look at what we can do to create the change that we need to see among ourselves, to be the change that we want to see.
About Usa, let me just share with you. The bottom line is you can get somebody that maybe have familiar with certain things in the book. We can come out and interact. We're an interactive people. And our knowledge is always in the vein of griots. We just need to write things down. That's the beauty of having Sister Ayo here. So, and I know why you don't want to refer to that term, because that's just Europeans calling. We know you're not Latino, right? And your ancestors are working through you, so you were born warrior. And that's ironically what he's been talking to you about. Epigenetics / the epigenome. Your genes are waking up. And when they wake up, they do not go back to sleep. And that's the reason why these Europeans spend so many things to what he alluded to, how they keep the programming running through algorithms online to keep you in a lullaby trance. Because this is my brother's thing and his other colleagues' thing, and I'll jack him some things he want me. We're friends, you feel me? Yeah. So the bottom line in a nutshell is
we say it with love.
Caporati, all right, and Kupigani and Gume. We know all those things are our things, and your genes are basically saying it through your body. And you're born to be a warrior to avenge the pathological things that these Yurugu have done to the collective body of melanin-dominant people. That's why I don't usually say Black people, melanin-dominant people. So there was another question on a comment.
If I could add one piece to that, just in closing, if I may.
Go ahead, Baba.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just in terms of the warrior spirit, one of the things I always talk with Ayo about is my prayer to the Creator is also a prayer to those whose names I don't know and whose names I know, to always honor what they prayed about, what they sweat about, what they cried about, and what many of them died about. More specifically, I could even go to my mother's father. I never got a chance to see him because he was the first black train engineer in Northwest Ohio. And he was told, the day you drive the train is the day we kill you. The first day he drove the train, they killed him. Okay, KKK. And I can go on other family members. The point is, the work here, like the work you all are doing, I believe is spoken through those whose history you know and whose history you don't know, to be able to take advantage of the opportunities you have to bring truth, to bring life to not only your family, your community, but to the world.
Okay, the next question. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm going to say one last thing. I just want to ask one question, and don't get on me because I'm going to use your government names since we're using government names. So, Niana.
What the hell?
All right, yes, go ahead.
Benson asked you to be his moderator for a reason, and the both of you are brilliant, psychologists, and you're doing this work. Can you give us some insight on how your work intersect with his work and why he asked you to be the moderator here today?
Okay, can you succinctly tell her why you asked me to be the moderator?
Yeah.
Succinctly, and then I'll respond to the question.
Okay. I asked succinctly because, and I kind of go back to him and Kim Bell.
No, you didn't say it earlier. Go ahead.
Neuroscientists have a rich, deep understanding of the amazing processes that take place at the microscopic level. The intellect there is just absolutely amazing. And so having someone who that's their focus of study, in other words, taking things from the physiological to the psychological to the biological, but then going deeper to the neurological, to the neurochemical, but then going deeper to the genomic, the genes, but then the epigenomic on top of that. So my reason for asking him was because he understands how all of that interfaces to communicate the essence of the spiritual from that.
Okay, so now I'm going to respond to the question that I defaulted to you, so you respond to. That's a really ironic answer. You're telling me that I'm blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line in a nutshell is I'm a behavioral neuroscientist. When you're talking about brain inflammation, that's what I was telling you about, the cardiovascular events and the coronary buildup. I'm a behavioral neuroscientist. I'm also a clinical psychologist. And I love to say all of my training comes from HBCUs, North Carolina A&T, Fisk University, Meharry Medical College, and Howard University. Now, she probably mentioned that because she sees the overlap. And this is, believe it or not, this is like capoeira, what we're doing. You may not realize that we're doing capoeira. We're basically dancing with each other. And you punctuating stuff that I've already just said, which is kind of cute. But the bottom line is, in a nutshell, I've been doing this, God knows, for like 50 years. I decided to share a few of my books with the Sankofa family just so you guys could have it. And I keep throwing these rubber darts at him because we used to have these conversations about things going on with the brain. You follow me? And I'm so honored that he acknowledged my colleague, Dr. Kimberly Bell, who is the foundation core of Barbara Sky and Barbara Cooke, weaving together all the material that relates to epigenetics / the epigenome, right? I grew up with this crap. You feel me? And when I was in school, I was talking about cerebrology, and people were jacking me for saying it. Cerebrology is what happens to brain chemistry. So when the sister pointed that out to you, yeah, our stuff overlaps, but I've done stuff for the government. So I work oftentimes isolated. I don't tell people what I do, okay? Because you know how the government is. But the bottom line is, he's talking to you about that word I dropped a little while ago called psychoneuroimmunological phenomena. That's the epitome of epigenetics, right? You think it, you change it. You change it, you elevate oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is like little miniature Pac-Man running around in your body tearing up crap. Then they tear up crap and they create inflammation. You're probably hearing about maybe 5 years from now, they may tell you that schizophrenia is a quote unquote brain inflammatory response. They're going to tell you the same thing about diabetes, same thing about cardiovascular events, you name it, even certain types of cancers. So this is my thing. These are my babies. So this is why he asked me to be his wingman. And I'm throwing rubber darts at him because I'm teasing him, because when he didn't hear you, because he knows the answer, he didn't hear you. I want him to have an opportunity to expand, but I'm going to jack him when we leave because we got that kind of love for each other. Like, don't point at me to ask me about something. This is your book, Sky's book, and Dr. Bell's book. And I'm your colleague that's in the shadows. So the bottom line is, you all are family. That's why I told you, can't talk to you without the drum. The drum can actually change the resonance of your DNA. The drum can, you guys know you can play that bass music and you didn't even have to ask a sister for a dance. That bass chime came in, you looked that way, she heard the bass, the bodies would talk by themselves. That's called resonance. And so what he's telling you guys about, he and Sky have chronicled all that information, and they put it in an academic format that nobody can say that they don't know what they're talking about. They've done a comprehensive, thorough job of doing that. And that's the reason why I agreed to be his moderator, because this is for the greater good. You feel me? And Black people need to understand that you need to have some paper in your hand. You cannot trust a Nazi's web, Wikipedia. You need to have a book that's vetted by Black people, melanin dominant people, that they have the data, they laid it out. And these brothers and my colleague, Dr. Bell, Sky over in Seoul, they've done it very meticulously. You follow me? So she knows that I've been doing this for a minute. You feel me? And I'm honored that he asked me to be his moderator. And you see me smiling and smirking and throwing rubber darts at him because I'm playing and I'm throwing in his face. This is the book that you did with Sky. I'm right down the hall from you, brother. We used to have these conversations. You feel me? And so you know how it is with Black people. It's like, I gave you a recipe, you served the recipe in another restaurant, and we put the recipe together. You feel me? You guys get my drift, right? So the bottom line in the nutshell is, I love this brother. If I didn't love this brother, I would have said, you got to be in the twilight zone and the outer limits to ask me to moderate this text. But because his spirit is aligned with the greater good, and he knows the need to document like no one else does, and he's meticulous about documentation, and you guys inadvertently made him nervous. I'm like, this is your stuff. The ancestor will run it through you. But I got your back, Baba.
Okay, and I found it. The book is Brainwashed by Tom Burrell. It took me a minute. That's the book you want to read.
So I appreciate that peanut butter eating author of the book club, the whole 9 yards, Dr. Ayo. And I tease her because when I found out she liked peanut butter and jelly, you all know who else like peanut butter and jelly, because those are vegetable things. Joe Washington Carter, my favorite little old school friend. Hey, Con, would you like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? You all know Michael, don't you? And Akon said, I thought we were going to have some real food. Akon is from Senegal. Akon said, Michael asked him to eat, and he said, I have peanut butter and jelly. And so the point being, Black people, we know what we need to eat. You follow me? And when the sister asked the question about pregnancy, carrying a child, if you're around toxic people, don't let them touch your tummy. Don't let them in the auric field. As a matter of fact, your baby will kick you or jump on your bladder if you're around toxic people, and make you sick when you're not eating stuff that you're supposed to eat. And so all these things are embedded in that book, but they're captured in the scientific literature, and I applaud the work. So Asante Sana Nadasi.
Family, I know we could all continue to sit in this energy all evening. Unfortunately, we have time for just one more question. We have to prepare for another event that's coming up in just a few minutes. At 6:30, we have an event, Malcolm X and Literature, hosted by Brian Gilmore. It's part of our series. It's the 6th in our series celebrating Malcolm X's centennial birthday, which was this May 19th. The event will include presentations and discussion with the great Laini Mataka, Nubia Kai, Kenneth Carroll, Kelly Navies, and Brian Gilmore. So thank you all again for being here. We have time for this one last question.
Okay, before we do that last question, I want to just throw this out there real quick because I see them. I have my daughter here, Daia Suad. I have my son, Sadiq Safadine, somewhere right back there. As I said, I have my roommate from college, Haroldine Chulia here, and his lovely wife. And I know some other people from ABC and stuff, but I wanted to point them out. And then is, what's her name? Candace Briggs. Is Dr. Briggs here? She's not here? Okay. Because there was a ABC member who earned a free book. Talk to ABC. And so I have that here for her. But now we go to the last question. And of course, my brother Sean Coleman. I don't know if Nathan Mazzell, she's not here, is she? Okay, no. Okay. All right. All right.
All right. First of all, let me just say thank you. I'll stand up. Excuse me. I'm sorry. First of all, let me just say thank you, Dr. Cooke, for this book, and thank you as well to your moderator, not only for being entertaining but also informative. Thank you to Dr. Ayo, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, for publishing this, and thank you as well for pouring into Brother Dr. Sean Coleman, who's a professor at the University I attend.
And dean.
Yes, a dean. And so I appreciate that because he is pointing to brothers and sisters at our school. So
All right.
thank you for paying it forward. And I believe that communalism is an Afrocentric value. So I think it's okay for you to be the wingman, but also to participate. So I appreciate your contributions this whole time as well, good sir. My question, so basically I'm very big on kind of boiling things down, and I'm a very practical guy. So I appreciate the depth, but there were some really big takeaways that I got from this. One was, of course, the transgenerational and intergenerational impact of racism through the epigenome issue. But also there were some takeaways that I would consider protective factors because I'm big on solutions. And so the protective factors that I heard you talking about were nutrition, also the physical environment, which you mentioned, you
Toxic environments.
Hurricane Katrina and things like that, and toxic waste. And then also social environments, not being around people that stress you out and that type of thing. And I think the brother earlier had asked you about flipping nutrition questions from what's bad to what's good. And I appreciate what you answered about that. My question is flipping the social and physical environment questions. You talked about the negative physical and social environments and what the impacts those have. Could you just talk a little bit more about social and physical environments that actually could promote mental health and physical well-being for African Americans? And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, be real quick. And then I am going to sign autograph books, so I probably have to do it up there if they're going to be sitting up here for the next program. I should have gave the answer before I start talking.
I ain't touching it. I ain't touching it.
I know. Oh, God.
Hey, brother, give it.
Okay, so no, I got it. Here goes. So we have to kind of go back to the tradition thing. I was raised in the Black church where they taught you what you needed to know about who and whose you are. I learned Black history there. I learned about connecting with my community there. There were clubs that used to exist, Black clubs that used to exist in the neighborhood. In other words, in defining our reality, we have to create the places and spaces that are needed to enrich our communities. There's a sister who works with Black hair, Afia Mbalashaka. She used to take me with her to Black barbershops and beauty shops. So we have the places and spaces. Those of us who know need to volunteer our time and our expertise and our creative energies in those spaces to provide the information that the people taking advantage of those places to better themselves, to kind of help them understand the information that they need to learn. I do pro bono work. Pro bono is a way of saying my background is clinical psych and counseling psych. I go to those places and spaces where people say, hey, can you come here? I can't afford pro bono. That means it's free. I'm coming there to give back to my community. So find those people who are willing and committed. Now, everybody who's licensed is supposed to do pro bono work, right? Sam, is he still here or did he left? He probably left. So my point is that this is something that we are committed, need to be committed to doing. Finding those, and if we can't find them, create them. I used to do a rites of passage program at the church, manhood training, rites of passage. That was something that required free time, but more importantly, pouring energy into giving to Black youth the information that they need to grow into the people that we need in our community.
Let me punctuate that very succinctly. In a nutshell, Baba, the music that you listen to, you need to start choosing your music. Not some of the stuff these guys are sampling. If the brothers that are spitting rhymes that don't have any sense in them other than tapping somebody's behind, you need to put those rhymes to the side and line up with something that's conscious oriented. So I'm telling you that because your food, your music, your voice is your most powerful instrument. And these vanilla brothers and sisters, they know that. So you need to start choosing. And when you're online on the Nancy's web, you click here to go there and it takes you somewhere else, you need to close out that link, because the algorithm will put you in a cul-de-sac and you won't be able to get out of. So you need to start making conscious decisions about how you're doing what you're doing. And your music and your food is the foundation for that. The other thing is you need to work on how to keep your energy from your lower chakra. Your lower chakra wants pleasure, to escape institutional racism, because it's designed to get pleasure, because it's designed to keep you alive. And pleasure is intimately tied to procreation. And I don't need to tell you, that's what's going on today in this society. They are eliminating melanin-dominant males very systematically, and they are maligning our family. So be mindful of that. Your music, your food, and the company you keep, and you don't even have to get us to roll in for pro bono. You choose your music. Don't let your music choose you, because everybody is doing it. That's what I wanted to share with you. It's been my honor to be here. I hope I didn't talk too much, but what can I say? We family.
Thank you, everybody. All right. So, organizer, to sign books, should I leave this space right here and go up there?
I think that makes sense. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Family, we hope that you will stick around for Malcolm X and the Arts at 6:30.
Okay, but I advise students who are they have so much so difficult to figure out. I try to convince them to stay in the field for how can I help them more, because I understand.
I want to know. Jarabi wale yoro jamdala, anyana finde benane bekanbe. Shiri wale yoro jamzila, anyana finde benane bekanbe. Ako jarabi ala yoro janda ale maso skegima. Tell me. Tell me.